Okay, so come on back, y'all. Okay, so the reason I had us play that game was to break the ice, but also to emphasize the importance of participation. So as counselors, our job is to try to get all the kids fully engaged, and number one way to do that is to be that yourself. So that enthusiasm that we had right there, that was great. I expect the same for every activity, for the skits, for like discussion and praise, and like I chose that game because it's really awkward and uncomfortable, and I want y'all to get okay with that because you need to be able to, you know, like play hit the deck or play ziggity bop, or maybe if you don't want to say big booty, then okay, fine, that's the exception, but like everything else, just like go all in and just get out of your comfort zone a little. Do it for the kids, do it for God. And also, this may be a stretch, but I believe we just built our team synchronization with that one. So us leaders, we're like united now. Maybe, kind of.
15 seconds.
Yeah. So what is Unite? Can I just open the floor and have you guys share what is Unite? Most of you guys have already been here, but what's Unite? What's it about? Don't make me use the laser.
When this was recommended by my pastor, he said this is the most diverse group of Presbyterians that get together. But it's not Presbyterian anymore so much, but still, we try to keep that.
Very true. It's pretty unique. What else? Hey, this table.
What is the question?
What is your Define Unite. The event. Right here.
How many churches did we start out with?
We started out with four,
And now we have how many?
We had, last year we had 10. This year, I think we're gonna be right at
Back down to 4.
Okay.
But you know, we created this like plan or this retreat so that instead of just churches doing it solo and getting closer with one another, it was more of a plan to reach out to those who don't necessarily have the opportunity to go to retreat, and so that we can share the word of God, not with just people we're comfortable with, but with other people that may never have heard who Jesus was or who God is. And so at first, a little skeptical, but I think it's a really good thing that we're doing this. Because it does really push you out of your comfort zone. It really challenges you to think outside the box when it comes to dealing with certain students. So that's good.
Very good point. What else?
Unite is, to me, like the better part of the week, just being like immersed in Jesus and like being around like fellow followers, just to.
Nice. Yes?
I think it's a unique opportunity for young kids and also people our age to get together and worship God and also just kind of experience like what the kingdom of heaven is like, that diversity. And like Unite is kind of like unity where it's like you embrace the diversity among us, and that's really beautiful. I feel like that's a really unique opportunity.
Very true. Anyone else? Okay, so those are all very great things, and I just wanted to say, yeah, it's first and foremost about seeking God, and all the stuff that you brought up, like the community, that's definitely there. It's about being one, but also about competition to make it fun. So we'll do that through divvying up into teams, so there's like a sense of unity within your team, and then also like as a whole, do like competitions like games or skits, things that will like award points to kind of keep the energy up in different ways. Also, of course, there's delicious food like Zach talked about. And there's a lot of snow, so there'll be activities outside like snowball fights, building forts, trucking a mile to your cabin at night. All good things, all good things. And I just wanted to say thank you for stepping up, because the role that you play by attending Unite and leading these kids is super important. And maybe you might sometimes feel like you're just kind of in the background, but it's your participation that really makes it an amazing experience, not just for the kids, but also for yourself. So thank you ahead of time. You guys are awesome peoples. So what is your role as a counselor? The main role is, of course, to serve. So things that you had to keep in mind, though, is number one, kid safety. So let's keep these kids physically safe, okay? And let's keep them emotionally safe, too. So physically, there's a lot of snow, and it's out kind of in the wild, so make sure you're keeping track of your kids and not letting kids wander or like climb dangerous snow roofs on the cabins. Just keep an eye out for their safety, physically and emotionally, especially when it comes time to do like small group discussions, kind of building that environment that makes kids feel like it's a good place for them to open up. And we'll deep dive into that a little bit later. Also important, just you're there to help them grow in spirit in any way, whether it's like small ways or like really profound big ways. So that's your role, is to be their support too, and to be with them in their walk. A big important rule is please don't let the kids go into the girls' cabins if they're boys and the boys' cabins if they're girls. That's a big rule that we have. Just don't let that happen. And make it clear, like from the get-go. Hey guys, this is an important rule. If you break this rule, you get sent home. Has that ever happened, HT?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. So let's keep that record going. And also to have fun. So yeah, easy enough. So also as a counselor, good things to remember. Please be a friend to everybody, and anybody. This means like people outside your church, like co-counselors, get to know each other, and don't be afraid to approach a kid that looks like unapproachable. Because of course, like every year there's somebody that looks like they rather spend time alone, but make it your initiative to try to bring them into the group and do that. Another thing, be helpful, be willing to say yes when someone asks you for a hand, like Alex, clean up aisle 3, can you get that while I'm like doing this thing? Alex would say,
Oh yeah.
perfect.
I got you, fam.
Perfect. And it might be like easy or it might be kind of dirty work, like in the kitchen. Just be a yes man. Also, let's remember to keep it PG. We have a lot of different churches coming together, and just for the sake of making it kind of streamlined, let's agree on try to keep the language and like the content clean, and like not just talking about the kids. Like I'm talking about as leaders, like they're gonna look up to you, and if they see you not then they won't really either. Buddy system is important, even though it's a safe place, just for the sake of guaranteeing that we know like where everybody is. Like make sure people aren't wandering off by themselves, and especially at night, if kids are like, oh, I forgot something at the main cabin and I need to go back, then you gotta go with them. Don't just be like, okay, be right back. Just go with them. No electronics like iPods or phones. Like you won't get good service up there anyway. But unless you're like playing Bop It or Catchphrase, like you really don't need an electronic. So try to keep those away and out of sight so that other kids aren't tempted to do the same thing. You want them to socialize together. Participate, like how we just played that game. And also, you might get humbled just because as co-counselors, we need to hold each other accountable. And when that happens, don't be surprised and don't like take it personally and offensively. Like an example, if I was like just during praise, I was just like on my phone, and then Melissa was just like, hey, you're on your phone. And I might just be like, swerve, mind your own business. But maybe I should actually, just take that and be like, oh, thanks for having my back. And like, not take it as like a harsh rebuking, but more as like a, hey, like counselor to counselor, just trying to keep you accountable. So you might get humble, but that's okay. So expect it. Other things. So Unite, how we talked about, it's about bringing all these different churches together. But when we come together, we're not just a bunch of different churches. We're like one church. So counselors, it's okay to, go talk and hang out with other kids that are not from your church. Or if you have to, sometimes it's like not the comfortable thing to do, but sometimes you might have to go tell a kid like, yo, let's not be throwing snow chunks up on the roof. So you might have to kind of be the bad cop, and just be okay with doing that when it's not just your kids. Because that's a safety issue. You're not gonna just let them be just because they're not from your church. The safety is like very important, so for anybody, you should be able to do that. So I got your back. So enforcing rules, stuff like that. Like if you see a teacher having to do like rule enforcing, don't just assume that they got it under control. Go up to them and be like, oh yeah, kids, Melissa's right. Maybe you shouldn't be trying to climb that cabin. Let's come back. And then Melissa all of a sudden will be like, thank you. That was very intimidating. These kids, they scare me and they don't listen to me. But when there's two of us and we unite, then we are stronger. So yeah, when you see a counselor stepping up, just go ahead and help them and take that initiative. And then, like vice versa, if you're doing something and then a counselor just comes up to help you, don't think it's them trying to step on your toes or them trying to tell you don't know what you're doing. Like, just take it as like, hey, we're just all here to help each other out. Okay, one thing that might come up is a kid asks you to pray for them. And like personally, this is not something that happens to me a lot. So if I was uncomfortable and I just don't know if I, can do that and support them to like what they need, then it's okay to be like, hey, Lena, so-and-so just asked me to pray with them, and I asked them if it's okay to bring you into this. Could you please pray with us? So be okay with not having like the right answer or like not knowing what to do and pulling on each other. And please say yes when someone asks you to help. Reaching out has to do with like the lonely kids, or like the kids that just kind of are less comfortable just like jumping into like a group activity. Everybody here, like that's you guys first, and then it would be even greater if you could have other kids, pull in, so it's not just like, oh, the teacher's just wanting to talk to me, but if you can engage more kids, better. Okay, another thing about having each other's backs is trying to look like the co-counselors are all on the same page. So when you have a disagreement with a co-counselor, try to address it in a tactful way and not just like let's not just blast each other in front of the kids, because that just sets a really weird example and it does not spread the message that we're united. So I don't know, example, like in discussion when you do small groups, maybe, there's a lot of different views or interpretations, but that's supposed to be like a really safe place. So, and not just for the kids, but for the counselors too. So like if you have a really big disagreement or about leadership or how you want to do things, maybe take that aside and not just go back and forth in front of the kids right there, because that's not what the time is for. And last point, just to remember, is appropriateness with students. Let's verbally, let's not be like using slurs or derogatory language or just like cursing. Let's not do that. And also, it's totally normal to like get really close with these kids like really fast. Like that's kind of what happens at a retreat. But just keep in mind that you need to have some boundaries. Like just when a kid wants to come up because they really like you and they want to bond with you, just put it there, man. Right there. That's the safe zone, okay? Hugs a little bit, just let's not. And especially like the older counselors, you guys have been doing this for so long, and like those 6th grade kids are just so dang cute, but don't let them sit on your lap. Don't let them like cling all over you, okay? That's just a good rule of thumb to avoid any sorts of misinterpretation. Yes?
Are you talking about like girl guy or girl girl too, and guy guy?
I think just anything.
All.
Yeah.
I'll put out there that I have a daughter that will be on the retreat, and so I don't know if she'll come up to me and give me a hug or whatnot, but I know I'll talk with her.
Okay,
But, I mean,
okay.
she's getting older, so she's like, get away, mom. But
You're the one that's like, honey.
but I know that there's been some times where there have been parents
Yeah.
with their children along,
Yeah.
and it's been confusing to others
Yes.
as to is there something there that's not okay or what is it? So
Good point.
I don't know.
Good point. So yeah, just yes.
Oh, you can finish.
I was just gonna say, yeah, maybe when you go back to your churches, just kind of like bring up these things so people are aware ahead of time, so it's not just like blindsiding them, like when someone's like, "Hey, don't touch that kid like that," and it's like, "Yo, it's my son." Okay, just you know. Oh my gosh! Wait, we're related. Just yeah. So maybe just before we go, because I know this isn't all the counselors. Hopefully. We'll see. Okay, Curtis.
The note about appropriateness is good, yeah, because we do get close to the kids. And there's also, you as a counselor can share too much. Like, I understand that there's value in being honest and vulnerable and authentic, but as an adult, you do need to be a little bit aware that it's easy, actually, as an adult and as a counselor, to share too much of your own life story or experience that it becomes inappropriate. So it's sort of like, be more of a listener than a sharer. That's just probably a good rule of thumb to kind of keep you on the safe side. I can't draw a real, one thing would be like, don't talk, obviously some of these things are obvious, but like, you don't want to share your sexual misadventures, even if you're doing it as like but I learned from my mistakes sort of thing. You don't really want to do that because that can get misinterpreted, and it's just too much,
Yes.
too much information. So, yeah.
Very good point. Very good. Actually, this would be kind of a good time to open up. Do you guys have any like experiences or extra feedback just from your experience leading small groups that you want to share? Anything you can think back on?
I think one thing is doubt. I think that's where I always struggle with myself as an adult, because, everybody's on a faith journey, and that's one thing I noticed. I don't know if it was last year, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a leader who is obviously struggling too, and I struggle, but it's kind of like you have to be able to say to kids, yeah, I get that, and be, yeah, it's okay to doubt, it's okay to struggle, but then also not turn around so kids are counseling you, and hearing out all of your stuff. Like if you need to talk to somebody about the things where you're uncertain or you need help, then go to HT or me or one of the older leaders and say like, hey, I'm leading this group and there's this issue and I don't know what I believe about this and I'm not even sure I believe anymore, we'll talk to you and just, you spare the 7th graders from hearing your deepest doubts. And
True. You got support here.
Yeah.
Yes. Anything else? Lena?
I was just gonna, so I was thinking about the reaching out part and within small groups, but also in the bigger group times. Like, I know we have a couple kids who come in the past and likely will be back that are on the autism spectrum or have high anxiety things that sometimes showing up at the retreat is just a huge step for them at first. And so I know it's something I've had to learn over the years, but because you want everyone to be involved and engaged, but sometimes some of them may need to just sit on the side for a little bit to process what is happening and then be more comfortable. But I think a continual invite into these things is good. But sometimes forcing this, or I guess just being aware that sometimes it's not just an introvert thing, that maybe there's something else, that they can be standing in the back and still get a full experience of the retreat. And I know in small group settings that can be difficult as well. And I guess the same with the spiritual aspect. If you need someone to bounce ideas off of, or you need coaching or something, don't be afraid to ask us or others also.
And then, as a counselor, as a volunteer counselor, always see the youth director folks as your resource to go to if you feel like, it doesn't have to be a behavioral thing, but like you said, if you have a kid in your group who is, on the autism spectrum or something, and you're like, I just don't know what to do with this kid, like, use the older people in the room as a resource. Because I've worked with kids with autism, and I bet some of the other leaders have too. So definitely always feel free to come and reach out and get supported in that.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think what that would look like is if like someone like Zach doesn't know a kid from Curtis's church, but he's like, hey Curtis, like this kid, like how does he respond to, like, how can I get him involved? I don't really know. And Curtis might be like, oh, like he's kind of like a quiet type, so he might be a little put off if you're like, hey buddy!
Right.
And then you're like, oh, good to know because I'm like that.
Right.
So like that's kind of like how you would reach out with the teachers from the church, and that's what it might look
I
like.
have more of a clarifying question. So when we're talking about buddy system, do we mean 2s or 3s?
What do you think, HT?
So can I walk a boy to his cabin? Can I walk a girl to her cabin? Or do I say you and a friend needs to come? So there's always 3. That's the new Safe Church
The
policy.
new gold standard is study, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we will go with that new standard. Let's go 3s.
Triforce.
So just invite a friend to come with you to be a witness, so that you don't hear later that you slapped the kid in the woods and there were no witnesses around.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Triforce. Okay. Anything else? These are all really good points. HD?
Oh yeah, going back with everything that we're talking about, one rule of thumb that I always use is, you're not friends with these kids, you act like you're friends with these kids. Does that make sense? Because you want them to open up to you, but like a friend, you're not going to open up to them, in a sense like what Curtis was sharing. You will open up a little bit, but you're not going to devote your whole life out there and just throw your whole, everything out there. But you are going to support them, because your role as a counselor is to serve, first and foremost. So you're not their friend, you're there to serve them, okay? So one rule of thumb, if you feel like you're getting too close and you're just sharing too much, then you need to take a step back and you need to evaluate where you are. Does that make sense? So you are acting like their friend, but really your job isn't to be their friend, your job is to serve them. Okay, that's just kind of the rule of thumb that I get, or that I kind of pass on, so, all right?
Yeah. And hopefully you'll be leading discussion with another counselor, so there'll be that accountability. So remember, like when someone tries to co-counselor advise you, try not to get offended. Just take it with grace. Okay, so now might be a good time for like a 5-minute break if you need to go get a drink or use the bathroom, and then we'll reconvene for the last bit. Okay, if you guys are ready to resume. Okay, so do you guys just have any last questions about counselor behavior at all to clarify, or thoughts before we move on? Anything? Okay, so now we're just gonna kind of go into specifics about the discussion groups. So one thing that I recommend doing is having kind of a very first meeting, have it kind of like this outline, because the first time you meet up with your small groups, and these are like the small groups that you'll spend the rest of the retreat with, like getting closer in those smaller discussions. They'll be much more intimate. Hopefully kids will get comfortable opening up and sharing about themselves and their like scripture interpretation and their walk in faith. So right off the bat, you want to try to establish like knowing each other's names and getting to know each other. So don't just stop at like, okay, let's go round robin names and then be like, okay, let's dive into the scripture. Try to, take your time, make it authentic, and maybe have them share, who they are, what they're into, and this will help you understand your class, but also for them to get to know each other. Who knows, maybe they'll be like, oh, I didn't know she's really into art. I am too. That's cool.
Yes, I was just gonna say, that's very important. Just asking, like, do you go to church? Does your family go to church? Because that means, I'm bringing 2 kids whose mom signed them up, and I've never seen them in anything.
Yeah.
So and so you might be talking to them about Moses, and they have no idea. So just ask them up front, do you go to church? Does your family go to church?
Mm-hmm.
I remember somebody told me, my family doesn't go to church, but I've been proud by a friend. That's a different context.
Yes, super diverse. So don't assume that everybody's has the similar walk in faith as you, or just like everybody's kind of the same. Ask them the question, and maybe it's kind of like awkward for them to answer, but it's good because it'll help you kind of gauge your group. And then maybe that'll kind of get them thinking like what they want to get out of this retreat too, which is also helpful. Another really good thing to do with your group the first time you meet is be like, okay, great, now that we know each other, let's establish some ground rules for us. Let's make our own rules about how we want this group to function. And hopefully out of that you'll get, okay, let's be respectful, let's listen to each other, let's not interrupt each other. And yes, these are all basics, but when you have the kids come up with it themselves, there's more ownership in that. So that when you might need to bring the focus back in, it's not just the teacher bringing down the hammer and being like, focus! It's what's rule number 2? And then they'll be like, oh, it'll click. And hopefully it'll be easier for you. Any questions on that? Okay. And yes, this might be the meeting after a sermon, but don't feel like you have to jump right into the discussion questions. Just, you gotta get to know each other before you make that group discussion beneficial in any real way. So it's okay to start with this and then be like, okay, good. Do you guys want to start with a question or 2? Like that. Like Curtis was saying, good rule of thumb is to listen more than you speak. So most likely these kids will be coming from an hour-long sermon, and probably the last thing they want to do is go to another group where they just have to sit there and listen. These are kids, they have lots of energy. Let's help them channel that energy into a big discussion. And your job is to not just play conversation ping pong, if I ask a question and then Lena answers and I'm like, very good, here's what I think about that, blah, 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 Zach, and then he answers and I'm like, I have a funny story about that too, blah, 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 blah. That will end up you talking half the time, and every other single kid may be speaking this much. So your job as a counselor is to try to get them to steer the conversation, and maybe you can bring it in and focus it, but you want them to have ownership of that conversation. And one way you could do that is you ask a question, and yeah, you want everyone to answer, and yes, it's good to acknowledge their responses, but you could just be like, that's really good, what do you think about that? It's quick, it keeps the conversation going, and kids don't fall asleep. Respect is the big part, and that's where the ground rules come in, because it could be very intimidating for a kid to share with the group, and if they are, that's awesome. That means that your group is safe, it means they're getting comfortable with each other, and that means there's trust. And like those are all awesome things, but the thing about this is that it's still very delicate. So like any sign of disrespect can really like break that in an instant. Like a kid might be like pouring out their heart and like opening up about some family issues that they have. And then if two kids are just like giggling together, what does that tell this child? It means that they're not listening, it means they don't care. It means that really they're not listening. And then that kid might just be like, you know what, this is like so fake, and like I don't want to open up anymore. And that's horrible. So when that happens, like if you sense any disrespect, just nip it in the bud. Like you don't have to be a jerk about it, but it's important to be firm because you want to really maintain that this is a safe environment. Do you guys have any tips on how to do that? Or have you had to do it?
I don't know if that goes directly with this, but our philosophy of small groups is we're not trying to teach the kids what to think, we're trying to teach the kids how to think. And so if we go in it with like, all right, here's the answers A, B, and C that we want them to do. So we're going to ask these questions in a way that we get answers A, B, and C. And the kids can pick up on that, and then they start like thinking about what does Katie want me to say versus what do I actually think and what do I actually think about it, and sharing that. And so when I ask questions, I'm really trying to draw out of them like, how are they thinking about this? Why are they thinking that? Tell us more about it. Because then I'm not trying to get them to A, B, and C. We're really, facilitating conversation.
Yes, that's a super good point. Yep.
It's going with like a group management. I think just like from doing this for 15 years, the thing that works best is making the size of the group as small as possible. So I've been in groups, included in this retreat, where there would be 15, 16 people sitting and 2 or 3 counselors, and one is just leading and the other 2 are just like modeling listening, which works okay, but if you want kids to engage in a discussion outside of the 3 talkers that you're going to get, like myself, we're just going to have a comment for everything, you have to break it up into 6 people or less. So if you have 3 counselors in the group and you really want kids to share, I suggest you just each take, that's what Curtis's group did yesterday when you guys were talking about reconciliation. You just turned, as a counselor, took 3 kids and you guys turned to them, and then those 3 kids are easier to keep on task than have to have like somebody pouring their heart out and somebody on the other side of the oval of 16 people can't even hear half of it, and it's just falling asleep.
Super good point, and creative. So like I might not have thought of that, but that's a really good point. So just be willing to be flexible and open to asking
The
different
smaller the
methods.
group, the easier it is to have real discussion as opposed to.
Yeah. Anything else?
As far as respect, something that I learned that is important is just be prepared that you need to respect, the kid's pain, like no matter where that story is coming from, because some of the students have suffered things that I think we all objectively would say are terrible, but like other times, like I've had kids who would just be like sobbing because they're talking about the time their dog died, and in my head, I'm like rolling my eyes because it's like, it's like, come. But you have to remember that these kids are young, and just honor their pain. Like it still hurts them, even though in my heart I'm like, this is not a big deal, and you're kind of being weird that you're crying about this right now. But but you can't say that. You gotta. So that I would just say that's part of respect, and that's part of good listening. Is just be aware that people have very different experiences, and just honor people's pain, like regardless of their story.
Yep. Thanks for bringing that up, Jared.
Yeah, I was gonna say something like very similar to that, but like in my experience teaching, I'll ask a question and then I'll just get like the most ridiculous answer back. And I'll just be like, in my head, I'm like, why are you saying these things? But then out, like verbally, I'm like, hey, that's a great answer. Because I'm like, I don't want to like break them, and like I'm not in this right now for like the 4 days that we're there. Like faith isn't 4 days; it's like their lifetime. So if I can just be like, hey, that's awesome, just keep up the good work right now. they'll open up more now, and then down the line, it'll be easier for them to open up later. So just be very like encouraging, even though you're like, that was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, what are you saying? But like, and then also another thing is like, if you ask a question and then they say something that's slightly off topic, because that happens all the time.
Yes.
Don't be like, hey, let's get back. Be like, yeah, I like what you're saying, and then turn it back. Like, answer their question, essentially answer their question with the answer that like you kind of wanted them to give you. That way they kind of have a direction on where they want to go. Because if like you say like, you know, this answer, like this question, you word it the way you want, they kind of have a direction on where you want the conversation to like kind of go. Like I'm not steering the boat, I'm just kind of telling them, I'm like the Garmin. You know what I mean? And then another thing is like, you're gonna have a teacher or a counselor like across from you. I think that before we like actually start teaching, like just kind of talk to them and be like, hey, like how are you as like a teacher? Oh, you know, I'm like me, like personally, I'm like the bad cop. Like I could lay down the law, but my other counselor might not be able to. So that's something that I'll have to do that they can't. And then that's what we know we can do and that what they can do. And it makes conversation really easy.
That's a good idea. Just meeting up with your co-counselor, just kind of getting a feel for, like, that's a good idea. And then, like how Katie was saying that she doesn't want to just get them to her points, but there is like a fine line between, like, this kid just went on a 10-minute rant on Gundams, and that's really off topic. Like, I want to keep it organic, but like, let's keep it like focused. So like, that's your judgment call.
Can I just share one more thing that's
Yes.
like from some like a personal struggle that I have is not to give solutions. Like that's really hard for me. The kid's like, like I really want to go to church, but like, my grandma doesn't really want to get up and drive me, blah blah blah. I actually it was a real conversation at last year's retreat, and I'm like, how about you talk to your youth director about this? I mean, it's okay sometimes to be like, oh, if they're really asking for solutions, that maybe they're just like sharing or be like,
Yeah.
oh, your dog died. Could you stop like getting another dog? Like that kind of thing. So I mean, that's just where my mind goes right away. When people start sharing problems, I'm like, I have 5 solutions for you right here. Like I can give you, and that's not my job.
That's also a really good point. Thank you.
And one more thing maybe to add.
This is great.
Tagging on to all of this, I guess. When it comes to, okay, you have so many questions on this piece of paper in front of you. If your group gets through only one of them in the time that you're meeting, that's okay. And going along with we don't have to get all the way to the end. Or if there is something that's maybe not fully off topic, but kind of, and it's a topic that has to do with the overall thing. I would want to encourage freedom and for continuing that conversation with your group, if needed. That not having to stick to every single question and get through all of it.
Or the other way around, for guys groups who get through everything and there's nothing for people to say, like you throw out a question. Okay, yeah, you please throw out. You throw out a question and nobody has anything to say, or they're like, whatever you said. Like one thing to do is to give everybody a piece of paper, ask the question, and give them 2 minutes to write down an answer. And then say, okay, now we're gonna go around in a circle and share it. So that's, I mean, otherwise you are gonna get like the one person's like, yeah, my mother, okay, whatever you said. And okay, we're done yet, we're playing whatever, throw the ball. I know, I've seen that been in groups like that.
That's a creative solution. Creative. Anything else? Yes?
So this is for UGM, it's my first year like being the leader or whatever, but in our small groups that we do, I lead one of the small groups, and one of the things that I really think is really effective and everything is just like being sincere. When kids are talking to you or whatever, just be sincere, like actually like listen, show them that you're listening, and really like listen to them so you can know what they're saying and take in what they're saying, not so you can't respond or anything. Don't act like you know the answers or anything, and acknowledge what they're going through. If they do tell you something like kind of silly, but it's still upset, it is still a legitimate problem in their mind. Acknowledge the fact that they are upset about that, and really let them know that you are empathizing with them. Let them know that you are there for them. Empathize and just acknowledge and be sincere, so that way they know it's a conversation and that you are there to listen to them. You are there to help them. So that way they don't think that you're just doing what you have to do because you have to do it, but you're doing it because you want to, because you want them to know that there's someone there for them.
Very true. And sometimes that requires follow-up, like after the group is dismissed, and maybe that requires you to do a little more work, but like go up to them and be like, so like you shared that thing, like do you want to talk about it more, or like you okay? And it's just, yeah, that's a super good point, sincerity.
I feel like I'm a small group leader for on-campus ministry, and like the magic like happens almost like after the small group. You know, it's like the time when they give a little snippet about something that's happening in their life, and you approach them afterwards, and it's you taking the extra time and pouring into them that like makes the difference. It's like they're saying like this person they took time out of like a time where they could go play in the snow or something to come sit with you and like to talk to them. That's like that's what God does for us, you know? Like he comes and sits with us and meets us where we're at and like listens to us, and like that's really important afterwards is like that devotion of time and of love and energy begins. It's like a relationship to foster.
True. Any other input? Okay. So you guys probably already know, like, what does it look like to actually be sincere? What's it actually look like to be respectfully listening to someone? And I just put up a few things like eye contact, you know, not just like playing with your nails or like on your phone, which you shouldn't have in the first place. Okay. Not interrupting. And I don't just mean like off-topic interruption, because sometimes you could be like a teacher and you are like listening, but you keep interrupting like with solutions. And like sometimes like all you need to do is listen. Like you don't need to just cut them off and offer a solution. But sometimes it can be helpful to reiterate something back to a student if they're kind of going on for a while and you're like, okay, I didn't really get that, but like I feel like they're trying to get somewhere, and I don't want to just be like, great, next, you know, just take a second and be like, okay, so like you're saying this, and then just to show them that like you weren't just zoning out for their long outpouring. That's good. But like you don't have to like reiterate after every single person, because again, you want them to do most of the talking. But like it's also good if they shared something and you sense that it's because something deeper is going on. Like you could ask a follow-up question, and they might open up and they might just shut that door on you. But that's okay. You just have to kind of initiate the best you can. Questions? Zach?
So for asking questions, it's not just a yes or no, it's more of open-ended questions. Like, so if they say kind of something and you catch on that it's something deeper, you can always be like, and would you like to explain a little more about that, or how does that make you feel? It's more like questions you want to ask, so that they fill in the blanks rather than you giving them an answer.
Very good point. Very good. Anything else? Okay. Okay, I stole this from Curtis. Was it last year? The triangle, and I don't even know if I got them completely right.
It
But
was my wife's thing, so I don't really.
okay, so this is just kind of like a last thought for like a jumping off point if your kids want to start like going deep into the scripture, and rather than just talking about their self-application or like opening up about themselves. And then some of us like aren't like super comfortable diving into scripture because maybe we're self-conscious and we don't feel like we know enough to like talk about that. But like here's a good jumping off point if you don't know where to start is you read the scripture and you just think of it as like, okay, let's do like the triangle method. Let's do 3 things, which is identify the characters, identify the people, what are they doing, and let's talk about maybe what's going on in their minds. And this is just kind of a basic way to start asking questions with kind of like definitive, like very defined answers. Because sometimes when you start with a very ambiguous biblical question, it's like kids are just like, I don't know. But if you start with here, then you can kind of, get the ball rolling. And it might sound like too simple, but like it's actually really effective. Okay?
I think one thing that really worked for me is like, yeah, like the thing about like characters, what are they doing, and then like the thinking's more like interpretation. But like if you like, who are the characters, what's happening, and just the very basic like definitive answers that are really objective, then it's like then you have a base knowledge to build like what might this be saying to us? Because I feel like it's like it leads you into it instead of dumping you into like the event,
Yeah,
So.
very true. Anything else?
You can also ask just, is there a word or phrase in this passage that especially was interesting or spoke to you or that popped out during the reading? And people are sometimes even more willing to answer that, like even saying like, because sometimes I'll say my experience, when it's too obvious, who are the characters? Moses. Like, they kind of feel like this is a dumb question because it's too clear. But if it's like a Paul's letter, it might be a little bit more interesting. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
Got my notes from this tree.
Yes! Yes!
And so there's the triangle, and it says, yes.
And she kept up.
Who are the characters in this story, which is like the obvious, like you're giving them a good, easy pitch there. And then you ask, what are they thinking, feeling, doing? Those are the things, thinking, feeling, and their actions. And then you ask them, what do you think about? Like, what do you guys think about all of this? How does it make you feel? Like,
That.
yeah, what do you think? And like then also like comparing it to anything that's going on in the world or in their life as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then also the last thing says, what kind of actions are you called to do because of the story? So how are you, like, what do you think about this? How does this make you feel? What can you do now?
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Okay, well
Maybe
that's,
we could make a printout of that.
yeah.
It's a very poorly drawn triangle. And
It's really nice. You should share with people.
I screenshot it and sent it to you guys.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's all I had. So if you guys have any questions or last insights you want to share, the floor is open.
One thing, can you go back to your last slide?
And here, that one?
So, one thing I just want to reiterate is that if you guys don't know the answer to something, don't make it up. Especially if it's like a theological issue or a question that they're asking. If it's like a spiritual thing and you guys have no clue and you just think that you need to have an answer for it, no, you don't need to have an answer for it. And you'll lose respect by you guys answering something that you guys don't know. Does that make sense?
Can I give a good illustration? Happened this summer. I had a summer intern, and a little kid in the audience said, I wonder if there's going to be birthday parties in heaven. And she said, no, there's not. And I'm like,
Straight up,
no. Sorry. And she just ruined heaven for like 20 kids sitting in the room.
Well, no, that's a good example. No, but just kind of keep that in mind and know that if you guys say, I don't know the answer to that, it's okay to say that. But then instead of just saying that, you can say, but you know what, we can go and ask someone who might know better, and then come ask one of the leaders or something. But when you guys say something like that, make sure you guys remember to act upon it. So when you guys are in a small group and something comes out and you say, I don't know the answer to that, but you know what, let's go and ask someone. And then after the small group is over, don't forget. That's the point, right? Don't forget to act on what you just said that you were going to do. Because a lot of times it'll happen and you'll forget, and then all of a sudden, now you've lost the respect of that person because you forgot. So, so make sure that when you guys say something that you guys are going to do something, then you go do it. Make sure that you guys don't say things that you guys don't know the truth about. Okay? Yeah. So, I just wanted to reiterate that. I think that those are the two things that just really are so important to building relationships. Okay? And that really goes back to the whole trust thing, and that really goes back to the whole, respect thing, so. Okay.
Lena, did you have something?
Yeah, and so I guess it's more of a question to the whole group. As we are going to be talking about, sorry. Yes.
Yeah, can you come around to that side?
What side? The doors up there are locked. I've tried calling them.
Yeah, over here. It's all on the instructions.
So on what, that
This
side
side,
right there?
yeah.
So you want me to go around the building
Yep.
and then, okay.
Thank you.
So it comes out of an observation and experience last night that I had with one of the kids. And just, so as we're talking about reconciliation and we're just past elections and conversations about race and all of these different things. And I guess as a whole, I'd like us to be able to maybe come up with a plan or figure out ways to deal with when conversation gets heated or a student is offended by something or an adult says something that they didn't realize would trigger offense, which I did last night and had someone just read me. And I'm okay with that, but others might not be. And so I guess as far as I feel like, okay, we're also in a place where we want to encourage people to stand up for themselves. We want to allow people to have their voices and share their experiences in a safe place and open spaces. Even if there's a student that maybe they voted for Trump, and how do we give voice to those people too? Or I know, right?
Their families.
Right? Or, yeah, okay, this is true too. But, I guess, I don't know.
So
I feel like it's a hard question to put out there, and maybe it's not, but, how do we kind of, I don't want to control it all, but, maybe how as a group, how are we aware, or what might be our responses to the heated conversation, or somebody's going around and.
There's a pretty high potential for that this year because of the topic and the post-election tensions.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that came up in every single group yesterday. It just so happens that some groups were more homogenous politically than others. Sounds like yours wasn't. Mine was more like, yeah.
So if there's somebody that gets offended and then they get really mad and maybe some kind of argument, fight breaks out over it, how much is too much? I guess, and letting people work it out.
Don't
Is
ever
there
let
too
the
much?
students fight.
With
Like,
that?
so long, the students can disagree with each other, the students can have polite, respectful discourse, but they should never be fighting. They should never be yelling at each other, they should never be saying, that's a stupid thing, or, I think they can say it's a wrong thing, I think that's okay, that's part of discourse, is to be like, no, I believe that's a wrong idea, and here's why, but and also just be sensitive. Being sensitive to the fact that, again, what drives angry kind of rhetoric is fear usually, or a place of pain, and you just gotta be aware of that, be sensitive to it. If you feel like it's getting out of control, just shut it down. Be like, okay, we're done, we're not talking about this anymore, sorry. It was getting too heated, you can't be respectful to each other. I think that's okay, just shut it down, personally.
Yeah, I think you're right. This is a really heated topic, and whether it's racial reconciliation or reconciliation, with any other group of people or with us, to God. I think, I feel like de-escalation is really good. Getting in between students if something's happening and just talking to them about it. And I think it's not just shutting it down. I think it's for maybe shutting it down for the moment and also providing an outlet to be like, hey, if you want to talk about this later, definitely. Because I think like whether you voted for Trump, whether you voted for Hillary, Green Party, whatever, like that's, it can feel like objectively truthful in your mind, but I think the real necessity is to like be able to talk about it openly and with an open heart to try and understand. Coming from understanding, I think modeling that as leaders is really important. And even just saying that is really good, because I think that teaches them a way to talk about hard things without being like, oh, that's untouchable. Because that's a lot of what our society is. So this is really what this like retreat is about. Yeah, right. With reconciliation, you don't understand. I think that's really important.
One other dynamic I was aware of last night that I don't know how we're going to handle it. And whether it's in small groups, sometimes you want to break up into high schoolers with this leader, middle schoolers with this leader. But there is a real spectrum of understanding and intellectual ability here, as you can see. Like Curtis has told them, good talk. We came back here, I had 3 middle school boys there who could not pronounce the word reconciliation and didn't know what it meant. So kind of a lot of stuff just went over their head 100%. So I don't really know how we're gonna mediate that, and maybe you just have to judge where your group is at, and if you feel like people are completely on different sides, and then maybe you need to split and have a deeper discussion here, and then let's talk about everybody, let's talk about fighting with siblings, let's talk about when your mommy and daddy fight, and let's talk about things that are a little bit more tangible on this side, and then have a deeper discussion over there.
Is this mixed group, age groups? Or
I
is
don't
it
know
like-
how the groups are.
That's what it was last year.
Probably gonna be like that.
We're still deciding. I know some of the groups really wanting to stay together, so once we get all of the rosters in, we can divide it however we want to. It's gonna be better to do smaller groups, we can do smaller groups, it's gonna be better to do by age and gender, but part of it is really trying to get everyone intermingled with each other, hearing different perspectives.
I think the different ages was a really good idea. I think last year, my small group really tried to, because there are a lot of people in different areas, and we couldn't focus on things to not everyone got something out of it.
So if we did older and younger,
Yeah.
and then mixed gender.
Or one thing you could do is if you have 2 leaders, just say you're going to focus on high schoolers and you're going to focus on middle schoolers. So we come together, we share names, good, get to know you. Okay, so for these 3 questions, let's split into mini groups and at least have kind of that freedom. I mean, opinion about
Yeah, I think splitting by age is not a bad thing. And you're right to say that we have to figure it out. But we will.
Because we don't want them to segregate completely, so the high schoolers, there's the cool corner, and then there's the little kids corner. We want them to be together for skits and certain things, but sometimes discussion, that's what happens, is these guys are having discussions about somebody, being told on the stairs that the stairs should be segregated, and because they're black, and somebody is being told to go back to Mexico, while on the side, I'm trying to tell these kids how to pronounce the word reconciliation and what it means, So we ended up, and I was trying to do an act out, let's say I hit Zach, and Zach is mad at me, and then we come back, it was another Zach, and then he forgave me. That's reconciliation, So different kind of discussion.
It's good that we're thinking about all these different things, but we won't really know until we get there.
That's true.
So that's why it's really good that we're all sharing different points of views, things to think about.
7th grade boys would be 6th grade girls. So usually they're even a year younger development-wise. So.
Okay, well, that's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here, and pizza time.
Woo! People